Good morning, JLA middle schoolers. It is Mr. Manta here. It is the morning of Monday, June 1st, 2020, and we have the fourth lesson in our Unit 7, all about our planet, coming up here. Yes, you should have your notebooks out. You should be ready for a do now with a pencil and paper in hand. But before we jump right into the lesson today, I would indeed like to make an announcement. You guys may or may not know, I actually record these lessons the night before they go up. So it's Sunday night right now, and I've been watching the news all day. I feel like I gotta talk about, there's a little bit what's going on. So this is the same announcement that I wrote out on Google Classroom, but I want to read this to you guys as well. It just says, I want to take a moment to step out of teacher mode and acknowledge that there's been a lot of heavy stuff going on in our city, our country, and our world. I first and foremost hope that each and every one of you and your families are safe and well. I've been super impressed with the focus and determination most of you have shown over the past couple months, and can honestly say that making these videos and reading your comments has been a bright spot of my day that's helped me to stay happy and healthy. We have 2 weeks of online classes remaining, and I intend to finish strong, but I also understand that science lessons may not be the #1 most important thing in the world for you right now. So here's the deal. If you have something else more serious or urgent going on right now, and there's anything I can do to make your life easier, please have a parent reach out to me and let me know. That might mean an extension on science assignments, maybe, or that might just mean having a phone call to chat about life. That's my way of saying that I miss you guys. If life is carrying on for normal for you right now, then enjoy this lesson and let's chat in the comments. Leave me a comment, say, hey, what's up? Say how things are going for you. It might be a bit harder to focus than usual, but I've always found in times of uncertainty, having a familiar routine to stick to is a real source of comfort. Sincerely, that's me, Mr. Manta. I'm missing you guys a lot right now. These last couple weeks have finished strong. Clearly there's a ton going on, but hey, we're going to keep crushing it. If there's anything I can do to make your life easier, yes, please, please have your folks reach out to me and we can figure out whatever that is that we need to do. Barring that, we're going to go ahead and move along with today's lesson. We're going to start off with a do now, as we often do. This is reviewing the material we were talking about last week, all about water all around Earth and the things that we use water for. Here are your 5 do now questions. Pause this video and answer these questions now. Alright, I'm now assuming that you've done so. I shouldn't move on without you. Let's see the answers. Do now questions 1 through 5. Number 1. What percentage of the Earth's surface is covered in water? Yes, you should get this exact percentage in your memory for the quiz. It is 71% that's water. That's less than 3/4, but more than 2/3. Number 2. Nearly all of the water on Earth is salt water. You could also say ocean water, but salt water, same deal. Water that we can't really use because it's got too much salt in it. Number 3. Most of the water we use isn't what we do in our homes. It's the virtual water use that comes from all the things we buy and eat. We learned all about that term, virtual water use, like the water that has to get used up to produce energy or make a cheeseburger. Number 4, a water footprint, that's a term we learned, is a calculation of how much water an individual person, product, or country uses. And number 5, which uses more water? Brushing your teeth or eating a cheeseburger? Well, eating a cheeseburger, we learned last week, uses way more water. Well, why is that? Because, to recap what we talked about, there is a ton of virtual water that it takes to make something like a cheeseburger. So we saw this picture here, and we learned that a cheeseburger is made mainly of plant crops, right? Plants like wheat, onion, tomato, and lettuce. And producing all of those things requires that you have to grow a farm and water the farm to grow all those individual plants. So it takes all that water to make your cheeseburger. And the burger patty itself is made out of cow. In order to get all that beef, you have to one, feed a whole bunch of water to the cows that you're raising until they're old enough that you can make them into cheeseburgers. And 2, you have to probably water all of the crops that you're going to feed to the cow. And so all in all, it takes a ton of water to make something even as simple as one cheeseburger. And that is why when we look at the big graph of all of the things, this is national water use in the United States, all the things we all use water on, you see that the 2 biggest chunks are not actually home use. It's just a little 13% right here. That's your showers, your toilets, watering your lawns, all that kind of stuff. The biggest chunks are actually energy, creating all the electricity and the fuel that we use to, drive our cars, do all that kind of stuff. And farming is the other really big one, right? Growing all these crops, creating cheeseburgers and whatnot. So that's where most of the water that's being used in the United States is actually going. It's not going to your sink to brush your teeth. And if you want to save water, you should be thinking about your energy use really and your food consumption more than anything. All right, so we're looking at our Earth. That's the main focus of our unit, right? Our good friend, the Earth. And hey, we've already talked about Earth's water, and we started there because, heck, most of the Earth is water. But it is now time, it only makes sense to continue on and talk about what's going on land on Earth. And that is what today's lesson is going to be all about. In fact, we're starting with today's big question, which is, what are the main things that we use Earth's land for? We'll try to get a picture of what's going on the land on Earth. Since there's so much of it, we can't always drive around and see it all, right? But I want you guys to start off today with a prediction. This is going to be class for question 1. The question to you is, what would you guess most of the land in the United States is like? What I mean by that is, for example, if you drove a car back and forth all over the country, what do you think are the top 3 things that you would see most often? Take a wild guess. Maybe think about if you've ever been on a long road trip, what it is that you usually see out the window. What do you think takes up most of the land, most of the space in the United States? I want you to give me this prediction as class for question 1. Pause the video and answer it now. Alright, I'm now assuming that you've done that, and I'm very curious, and I look forward to seeing your guys' predictions. Now, to actually answer this question, we're going to take a look at a whole bunch of maps. First of all, we have this map. This is a map of the world. It is really a big picture that's compiled using a bunch of separate pictures taken by satellites. And if we look at the land on Earth, this map can kind of start to give us an idea of what's going on with all this different land, but it's hard to make out in any high detail what it is, what it's actually like down on the surface of the Earth. So, for example, we see that a lot of land is covered in these big swaths of green, which you might guess, you'd be correct to guess that those are mostly forests, and that green color that you're seeing is coming from trees. That's correct. And you're seeing that a lot of land is also a darker, or not a darker, a lighter, actually kind of sandy or tan color, which you would guess probably is most likely sand, and those are big swaths of desert. And that is absolutely also correct. So, like, up here, the whole northern half of almost of Africa is the Sahara Desert, the largest, most daunting desert on Earth. And then also you might see a few places around the map that are white in color, and that means, yes, that they are covered in ice and snow. So that gives you kind of a basic breakdown of common things that you at least can see from space going on land. But it's, are all these places that we're seeing, are there people around there? Are they uninhabited? Are they green because they're evergreen forests or rainforests or what, right? We need to get a better picture of what's going on land. In order to do that, we're going to throw back to a concept we learned all the way back in Unit 3 and Unit 2. Remember this? When we talked in Unit 2 about different kinds of ecosystems that exist all over the world, like Arctic waters and rainforests and deserts and shallow seas, we learned at some point, even in Unit 3, that we can talk about these different kinds of areas and classify them based on qualities that they would have, like their average temperature and the amount of precipitation, the rainfall that they get throughout the year. And we learned that places like a desert is defined by a place that gets very little precipitation. So if a place gets like only, 100 centimeters up here, if a place gets only 20 centimeters of precipitation and is maybe 60 degrees on average year-round, that classifies a place as a desert. That makes it different from a seasonal forest, which is different from a tropical rainforest, which has a lot of heat and a lot of precipitation, right? We learned all about these different places and that we can classify them. And we learned that these different kinds of ecosystems are called biomes. So a rainforest is an example of a biome. An evergreen forest is an example of a biome. A prairie, a savanna, all these different words, right? And if we think about biomes, that can help us get a better understanding of what all these different places are really like down there on the surface of the Earth. All these different ecosystems, right? So I want to take this map that we're looking at and change it to a different looking version of the same map that looks like this. Now this, again, is a world map, but this is a new version of the world map that was created by some scientists who wanted to classify different regions in the world based on what biome they are. So the legend for the map is down here, and that tells you what all these different colors that we are seeing mean. So for example, I see greens, I see oranges, I see white, I see gray. The white, as you might guess, means snow and ice, so Greenland up here is all covered in snow and ice. The gray that you're seeing like across the north of Africa and Saudi Arabia is right over here. It means barren or sparsely vegetated land, which is basically a fancy way of saying a desert. So any place that you see covered in this gray color, like the Sahara Desert right here, is a desert. And if you were to go there, it looks like this. Man, I do not envy those guys who have to walk all the way out across the Sahara Desert. The orange color that you're looking at, the oranges, there's a few shades of orange, but they stand for savannas and grasslands. So for example, there's a big patch of orange up here that goes across western China, all through Central Asia and Mongolia. That is known as the Mongolian steppe, S-T-E-P-P-E. It's a giant grassland that stretches for miles and miles and miles, and it would look like this if you actually went there. And the last color I want to also point out is the green color that you see, for example, down here in the Amazon rainforest. You also see a lot of greens up in Canada and across Russia. Greens, of course, stands for all different kinds of forests. So this giant splotch of green is the Amazon rainforest, and if you went there, you would see just endless green and trees for as far as the eye can see. It's truly beautiful, right? And so looking at this map can therefore give you a sense of the kinds of biomes that exist all across the world. And in fact, if you take all the information in this map and you make a pie chart out of it, and you say what are the most common biomes, you would see that the most common of all the biomes is the forests, which make up about 40% of all the land on Earth. After that, the grasslands and the deserts are just about tied. They both make up 25% of the land on Earth. And then you have the tundra. Tundra are like really cold, usually Arctic or Antarctic places. And not a lot of plants can survive the polar areas, and those make up about 10% instead. So that's really great to know. That gives us an idea that for the most part, as you travel around the world, you'd see a lot of forests, you'd see a good number of grasslands, deserts, and some tundra as well, right? But you might be asking, looking at this map, well, when I go around the world, at least the world that I know, I see a lot of people. So where on this map are all the people? Well, you may have noticed in the legend down here, there is a color that is red, and the red stands for urban and built-up areas. Urban is a fancy way of saying cities, basically. And so any areas that you see colored red on this map are urban areas that people have totally taken over and turned into cities. Do you see a lot of red on the map? I mean, I certainly don't. The one bit of red that I can kind of make out is if you look super closely right here in the eastern part of the United States, you can see some splotches of red that make up New York City and some of the surrounding cities like New Jersey. So this whole giant city only makes up this tiny, tiny, tiny bit of red. You also, if you look over on the east side, you can barely see Tokyo right there. I think you can see London somewhere else. But overall, these cities only take up a really tiny, tiny amount of all this land that we have. So that might leave you thinking that there is plenty of land for everyone, right? We can all just spread out and take up all the space that we want, huh? But I'm going to tell you guys, not so fast. Because we need to really think about this for a second. The land that you actually use in your day-to-day living isn't just like the land that your house is on. You need to think about all the land that it takes, for example, that you need to make, how about a cheeseburger? Yep, we're doing this again, but we're talking about land this time. Well, let's think about when any given day, if we eat something like a cheeseburger, all the land that it takes to create that cheeseburger. Well, we know already that we have a bun made of wheat, and we might have some onion and some lettuce and some tomato on there. Well, ladies and gents, in order to get all of that food, all those crops, you need to grow them somewhere. And so you need to dedicate huge amounts of land to farming. You might have a small farm over here that grows wheat, and another one over here that grows onions, and one over there that grows tomatoes, and another one back there that grows lettuce. But farms take up a whole bunch of space, a whole bunch of land, right? So that's going to take up a lot of land in the first place. And then, of course, you need the actual burger patty, which is made of beef, aka cow. And you need a whole bunch of land to raise your cows. Either you're going to need to have a bunch of fields where you grow soy or corn that you eventually feed to your cow, and it takes up a lot of space to do that. Or you're going to have to do what takes even more space and let your cows graze freely. Be grass-fed cows, where they, walk out across the landscape and eat grass as cows naturally do. And that takes up a whole bunch of space in order to do so. So it really takes up a ton of land to just create all the products and the food, and especially the food, especially the meat that we use in the United States. So when you really look at the United States and all the different things that are going on land, you see something more like this. This is an incredibly interesting, like I could spend days just looking at this one map. This is an incredibly interesting map published by some journalists over at the newspaper Bloomberg that breaks down the main different uses of land in the United States. And just like that last map we were looking at, it's color-coded, right? So anywhere that's colored yellow means that you're looking at pasture or rangeland. That's basically big grassy lands where cow are grazing. Anything that's green is a forest. You can see there's quite a bit of forest, especially in the eastern half of the United States. Anything that's brown is cropland. That means farmers are growing crops for us to eat. And then you have these other categories like special use and miscellaneous, which are often just like random people's properties, things like military bases and national parks. And the pink areas, which are urban areas. So like there you can see Chicago, the city of Chicago is pink because that's considered an urban area. The main thing that you see here is, holy heck, there is a lot of yellow land in the United States, which means that there is a lot of land being used as pasture to raise cattle. In fact, this is that same map. They've just taken all the colors and they've clumped them together so that you can see how much space each of the colors takes up. And you can see that the number one use of land in the United States, and yes, you expected to know this, is pasture. 645 million acres. Goodness gracious. After that, the number two use of land in the U.S. is forests, which is awesome. And after that comes cropland. And then you have these special uses, miscellaneous uses in urban areas, right? But those big three are really the three main things that you see land being used for, at least in the United States. Let's take them one by one. First of all, key point number one for today, write it down, folks. The number one thing that we use land for in this country is grazing cattle. Is raising cows. That's how much we like cows and we like being able to eat beef. Is that we use more land for that than anything. And that's a map of all the land that we use. In the United States, you and I, ladies and gents, we eat a lot of beef. Way more than most people around the world. So, for example, if you took all the countries, and some researchers did this, and you ranked them based on the amount of meat, about beef specifically, that each person eats on average, and you rank all those countries across the world, 170 different countries, the United States comes in number 3. And number 3 on here. On average, most people eat about 279 pounds of beef every single year, or meat, I think, overall. Every single year. That's a ton. That's way more than the average country. An average country, some country that's kind of in the middle, like these ones here, Ukraine, Moldova, Colombia, eat more like 80, 85 pounds of meat each year. So at 279, man, we are up there. And there's a lot of Americans, so there's so many of us and we're all eating that much meat, it takes up a heck of a lot of land to raise all of those cattle. And that's why there's more land being used for raising cows than anything in the United States. It's crazy. Now, key point number 2, yep, write it down, is that the second biggest use of land in the U.S. is forests. Oftentimes when people talk about the planet and the problems and the crises that the planet is facing, pollution and littering and climate change, it can be really sad. Well, I have some good news for you guys today. That is that forests, at least in the United States, are actually doing really well. There are more forests now in the United States than there were 30 years ago. They are growing, they're on the rise. We're increasingly learning how to manage them, and that's awesome. Why? Because forests are great. There are so many benefits of forests. First of all, they provide habitat for wild plants and animals. It's a place where wild animals can live. They, of course, make oxygen for us to breathe. That's why we like trees. And they're just great for people, for going on walks, for going on hikes, for spending time out in the woods. I know, but I saw about probably 2/3 of you guys when I asked you in the classroom questions said that you like spending time in nature. A lot of you guys said you don't get out there as often as you would like to. But hey, when you find yourself in a forest, you agree that it's nice. And I agree too. And that is why we get a picture of some very happy woodland creatures. I'm sure some of my girls in Purdue will enjoy seeing this picture, and I will see all kinds of adorable drawings of cute woodland animal people in the near future. So that's some good news for you. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to break your hearts a little bit, because for the rest of the world, this isn't always true. While the U.S. is gaining in its forest cover, some other countries are losing forests at a pretty scary rate too. They're being deforested and cut down for all kinds of reasons. One of those main reasons is to make more land to raise more cows, because other countries are trying to be like the U.S. and eat a lot more beef. And this can cause a lot of problems for animals. So we're going to talk about this probably later this week, that a lot of animals, one of the reasons a lot of animals are becoming endangered is because their homes, their habitat is being destroyed, including this lovely orangutan that we see here. Now, number 3 big use, or yeah, go ahead, key point 3, write it down. Our third biggest use of land in the United States is growing crops. On this map, Illinois is right here, right? And Chicago is right here. So especially in the area around us, kind of in this Midwest area, a ton of land is used for growing crops. And that's why for you guys who've taken road trips through Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, you probably see lots and lots of cornfields and soy fields as you're passing by, because we are kind of the quote-unquote the breadbasket of the United States, right? Now, when I say growing crops, sometimes that means running a farm, like that farm that we saw when we watched that movie, The Biggest Little Farm, an organic farm or a biodynamic farm where there's lots of different animals and lots of different plants, and they're all living in harmony, and everyone is happy and things are wonderful. But really, that's only a very small percentage of all this farming that's really going on. For the most part, most of the farms across the United States instead look more like this, with just one crop, in this case it's corn, being grown for acres and acres and acres as far as you can see. Corn plants, the same thing over and over and over again. And while raising a farm like this is really good for the environment, this kind of farming is not so much, because they have to use a lot of pesticides and heavy machinery and fertilizers, and it doesn't really support the wild animals and wildlife the way that doing an organic farm does. So when I say that, a third of the third biggest use of land in the United States is growing crops, mostly this is what you should picture, not like the farm that we saw, unfortunately. Though every year there's more and more people trying to do farming the right way, and that's really cool. Now, this picture is from that same article that I've been showing you guys pictures from this whole time, this map, and this is like a super detailed version of that map. So this map breaks down all the different things, the proportions of different uses of land across the United States. You can see, yes, the number one thing by far is raising cows. Some of that land is for raising sheep or goats or horses or whatever, but most of it, heck, it's raising cows. See a whole bunch of forest use over here, but this map also gives you a lot more detail on all kinds of different things. So I recommend taking a second just to look at this map, kind of look around at it and find some interesting things that the United States uses land on. Like, did you know, for example, that this much land, that's probably millions of acres in total, is used just for maple syrup, just so that we can have syrup to put on our pancakes. Wow, fancy that. Quite interesting. Alright, I want you guys actually to look at this map and use it to answer classwork question 2. I want to get your opinion on this. What are some things you think we should use less land for? And what are some things you think we should use more land for? Yes, you can look at this map to help you kind of get a reference and say, what are these things we are using way too much land for, and what are some things that aren't showing up that should show up? Maybe you don't think that much land should be used for golf. I don't know. Go ahead, pause the video, and answer classwork question 2 now. Dun, 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 dun. All right, assuming that you've completed it, I'm going to move on. Unpause the video. That brings us actually, folks, to our last part for today, which is our independent practice. Yes, number your notebooks 1 through 8. And here are those 8 questions. Some of them are from last week, some of them are from today. Pause the video, answer these 8 independent practice questions in your notebook now. All right, I'm moving along. You better have them answered. Number 1, what percent of Earth's surface is covered in water? That is 71%. Get that number in your mind. For number 2, I asked you to do the math yourself. Based on your answer to number 1, what percent of Earth's surface is covered in land? Well, if 71% is water, that means that 29% is land, because 71 plus 29 makes 100%. Number 3, scientists classify natural areas around the world into different types of ecosystems called biomes. You Minecraft players, again, have an advantage here. Number 4, the thing that we use the most land for in the United States is raising cattle, or cows. Cattle is kind of the generic term for that animal. Cows are specifically female, but the boys and the girls together are called cattle. Number 5, the second biggest use of land in the United States is forests. It's good news. It makes Mr. Manta very happy. Number 6, the third biggest use of land in the United States is farming or growing crops. You could say it either way. Number 7, true or false? Forests in the United States are almost gone. Well, thank goodness that is false. Forests are doing pretty well in the U.S. And number 8, true or false? Americans eat more beef than most other countries. Well, heck yes, that is true. We are third in the world for the amount of beef that we eat per person. It's a heck of a lot. All right, as usual, you're going to star those questions you got right, fix the answers you got wrong, and tell me in the classwork form. And, ladies and gents, that's all we got today. it is exit ticket time. Go ahead and crush those exit tickets. I want to see lots of 3 out of 3s. And I got a link as well. Today's cool thing. There's going to be another song. It's a song that I think you 6th graders, you Georgia Tech students, I've played for some of you guys sometimes. It's a cover of the song called Georgia on My Mind. I picked this song because it is a performance and a song that give me peace in a time when things are too much and too stressful. And so I recommend taking a few minutes at some point today and just putting on the song and enjoying it. Much love to all of you guys. Wishing you well. Crush your exit tickets. And I will talk to you hopefully in the comments. And then hopefully tomorrow as well. Take care.